everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Neuro-Inclusive DogPod, the podcast where we bridge the gap between neurodiversity and the dog world. So today I have got another fantastic guest for you. I'm going to let them introduce yourselves so we can get to know them a little bit better. So hiya, do you want to let everybody know who you are, what you do, that kind of thing?
Hi, yeah, I'm Sarah. Firstly, thanks for having me on. This is the first podcast that I've recorded. Hopefully it'll go okay. Sometimes the words get a little bit lost between my brain and my mouth, so I've made a whole bunch of notes.
Don't worry, mine are like that as well. Don't worry about
it. Yeah, I'm a virtual assistant that supports dog professionals. I operate as admin hound. And I think some people are maybe a little bit vague on what a virtual assistant actually is. So think of them maybe as like having an admin assistant or a PA, but they don't have to be in the same place as you, and they're freelance, so you don't need to worry about all of the extra bits and bobs that comes along with actually employing somebody, like employers' liability insurance and sick pay, and if the worst comes to the worst, firing them.
Amazing. So when it comes to the work that you do and the role that you help pet professionals with, could you give us a little bit of an example about what your role typically looks like, and when you're supporting somebody with their business, what kinds of tasks do you help them with?
Yeah, sure. So I'm sort of particularly interested really in supporting with things like events. I used to be an event manager for a big medical organization. Launches, so launching new products and services, because it's all very well to have the idea and to have the content for that, but then it's actually kind of making it happen, and there's quite often quite a lot of techie bits that go in with that, and for some people as well that can be quite daunting as well, like figuring out all the tech. So like, for instance, maybe you want to launch an online course. You've got all your content, that's fine, but then you need to think about things like proofreading, formatting it, what platform you're going to host it on, how to upload it, setting up payment, making sure your students can pay and then they can enroll and get the right access to the right bits of the course, and troubleshooting as well, like is there a real problem with the access in the course, or are they just putting in the wrong password too many times? I also like a bit of proofreading and typesetting or formatting. That's quite one of those quiet, detail orientated tasks that I really like to get into.
Amazing.
And something else I've been thinking about a little bit more recently is accessibility. There's a lot you can do, not just with sort of accessibility that we think you more normally think about, like closed captions and image descriptions, but also making things a bit more neurodivergent friendly. And that can often look like presenting the same information in different formats. Like I noticed with you, Katrina, I caught a reel of yours where you described the course that you've put together and how you'd done videos, but you'd also done transcripts so that people had different ways of accessing it. And of course that's all quite time consuming, isn't it? So, and that's something that could be quite easily handed over to somebody else, and can actually really then make a big difference to how people access the thing that you've just launched or your information.
And I think that's it. I think as dog professionals, especially as trainers or maybe walkers or whatever, in more hands-on kind of businesses, I think we can get so caught up in running our business and doing the day-to-day stuff. And then I know that definitely worked with me in a way that I was like ready to start like launching an online course or thinking about going a bit more in line. When I kind of went online, it was the whole COVID thing that kind of made everybody go online. So I kind of hit that at the right time. But for anybody now that's looking at it, it can be quite overwhelming, can't it? When you just say, you think, oh, I've got my course content, you think, oh, I'll just write a course and then that's all it takes. But then obviously you've got to sell it, but before you even sell it, you've got to put it on a platform, and then you've got to do all of these other little bits, and it's knowing it's not just the platforms itself. There's so many different platforms you can use to host a course.
Yeah.
It's, you know, are you going to have a Facebook group with it? Are you going to, how are you going to, how are people going to know about it? These, all of these other little jigsaw pieces. And I think sometimes that's when it can be overwhelming for neurotypical people. But for people that are neurodivergent, I think we can easily get into that overwhelm, can't we? Of like, I just don't know what to do, so I'm just not going to do anything. So I suppose the work that you do kind of like is that stopgap for me. It's that kind of helping hand that's like, you know, I can do all this for you, don't worry about it. It's like, and as a neurodivergent person, that's sometimes what people need, isn't it? Just a supportive person that gets it, that can do things in a way that still like aligns with their business and their values, and, you know, being neurodivergent yourself, I think you can relate to how the neurodivergent business owners are feeling. So it's not like what I've found with sales and marketing and all kind of technical stuff. If you're not coming from that neurodivergent background, it's easy to think that, you know, neurotypical, so to speak, are like, oh, we'll do it this way or do it that way. And our brains work differently, don't they? And I think having that extra level of, this is overwhelming, but don't worry, I get it, but we can tweak things to suit you and your business. Do you find that with that having that link to neurodivergence helps you to help your clients?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, neurodivergence is a spectrum, and we all experience it in different ways and at different levels. But I think just having that sort of experience gives me maybe a more kind of open and accepting mind to doing things differently, and to people kind of showing up in ways that feel more aligned with their energy than what they think they should be doing. You know, I've certainly had to learn that myself. I mean, I'm autistic, and that's something I only realized really in the last couple of years. And so, you know, that felt like quite a big relief, because I wasn't broken, I just was a bit different. But then, yeah, you know, it's learning all of those little sort of things that make your life easier. And I think it does, it also, I think it removes that kind of layer of expectation of how other people show up as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely felt that as well. And I think, like I said, one of the main reasons that I started learning all the businessy type coaching stuff that I do is because I was, you know, trying as a neurodivergent. I didn't know I was neurodivergent by then. And then I was like, oh, well, X says that I need to do it this way, but this way doesn't suit me. And then someone else says I need to do it this way. And what I ended up doing is just learning the businessy stuff myself and actually picking, you know, the pieces that suited me and how my brain worked and how I understood it. And it's like, I always like, it doesn't matter whether I'm dog training, dog agility, or business coaching, I always say there's so many different little pieces that you can put together for your own jigsaw to make it work for you, whether that's, like I say, training a dog or running your business. And I think as neurodivergents, we can be quite, you know, the world says we need to do it this way. And then what happens is that, you know, RSD kicks in and we're like, well, we're the ones that are doing it wrong. And, you know, everyone else is doing it this way and I can't seem to grasp that way. So it does seem, it can be quite daunting, can't it, for anybody, especially if they haven't got a tech background or they're not used to all the technology. So like I say, many dog trainers or whatever, they were very used to working in our business, and all of this tech stuff, we don't tend to really need it that much. We might have a booking system or something like that, and then we suddenly go, oh, I know, I'm going to go online or I'm going to do this, and then we actually go, actually there's quite a lot to do here, and I'm having to just kind of learn. And then you split, aren't you? Your time is split and you end up working like 24 hours a day because you've still got your clients to serve, but then you've got all of this other stuff you need to do as well. So do you find with your clients it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit by just handing that over to you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think also having, you know, a lot of dog trainers and canine pros, you know, they work alone. They're not part of a team of colleagues. So I think having someone else there to kind of bounce your ideas off and give you a bit of perspective and a bit of accountability and some validation for your ideas as well, and to just kind of help you, you know, you get all enthusiastic, you have this wonderful idea, and then the overwhelm sets in as to how you're actually going to make it happen. So having somebody that can kind of help you plan through the steps and sort of sort out all of that information and turn it into a plan of action, that's also realistic as well, because, you know, it's one thing to say you're going to launch this course like next month, but
Yeah.
can you plan to do that within your energy levels, or are you going to burn out?
Yeah, and I think as well, I think a lot of professionals can think, right, I'm gonna launch this course. I'm gonna, first of all, you've got all the tech side of it to actually build the course and do all of that kind of thing. But then it's coming, like, it's another kind of layer to actually selling it and getting people to put their eyes on your business, and you've got your things like your social media and all of those kind of things. And I don't think as dog trainers or walkers or whatever pet profession we're in, sometimes we don't account for that kind of thing. And what can happen is we might actually get a course and then we'll go, oh, this is brilliant, we'll launch it, but then we don't realize we need to do all of this other visibility stuff, we need to do all of this other kind of putting it out there to our ideal clients, not to just anybody. And then so what might happen is we'll put this course out and then it won't sell for whatever reason, but there's nothing wrong with the course, it's actually just a visibility thing. Or I think when it comes to the kind of technical side of it, the promotion kind of side of it, I think as neurodivergent people, we can kind of like post things once or possibly twice and go, oh, I've told everybody about that now. And, no one's going to want to hear it again. And especially with that RSD that kicks in, it can prevent us from shouting about ourselves and becoming visible. And I know that's something that I definitely struggled with, because you're like, oh, I've got to just like put my face on something, I've got to just put it out there again, and you feel like you're banging that drum like several times, and I've already said this, people are going to get sick of it. But because how the internet works, because of how social media works, it's a case of learning a little bit, like learning how Facebook works, learning how Instagram works. Not everybody's going to see your post. And like I say, this is when like I went down that route of the business coaching route. Like I was learning all the courses because the information wasn't really out there. And there was like people were saying, oh, do this or do that. But when you start going down these rabbit holes of how Facebook works, how Instagram works, how, many of the other platforms work, they've all got their own little sets of rules and things you should be doing and shouldn't be doing just to get people to see your posts and stuff. And it's like learning all of it. It's like when you're running your own business, I think it can soon be overwhelming, because you start, as well as doing your dog work, you're doing, your website work, you're doing your social media, you're having to learn how all of these different things work and putting them all together just to sell a course, so to speak. So I think by having somebody like you that knows all of that kind of stuff, they can just hand it over and go, this is what I want to do, please help me with it. And it kind of stops that overwhelm. And like I say, it's a case of sometimes I've seen it with my clients and stuff, they'll put a course out there and they'll go, well, it didn't work because nobody brought it. Well, they've had such a big task to actually get that course out there that they haven't done any of the other things, and they just it takes a long time, doesn't it? So there's a lot of steps to actually build your course and do that, but also to promote it and sell it, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even just creating the course, that can be quite draining as well, sort of creatively draining. So, being able to kind of build in a little bit of a break afterwards before you then get into the marketing and the visibility thing can be helpful. And again, the work that you're doing from day to day, working with clients and their dogs, that can also be very socially and emotionally draining, can't it?
Yeah.
And then make it harder to show up and be visible.
Yeah, definitely. And it's as much about balancing diaries as well, isn't it, as well as anything else. And I always talk about with my clients, so whatever hat I've got on at the time, I always talk about like an energy battery and how we'll have in our business. And everybody may be familiar with like the social battery kind of thing, but we also kind of have our own energy battery where some activities we do in that day will recharge us, but a lot will drain us. And it can be everyday like tasks. I mean, say for example, if you take my 3 dogs as an example, depending on their attitude, so we'll say, or where they're at in their emotional place at that time, sometimes you'll go and do a training session and it'll recharge you and it'll go really well, and sometimes it'll drain you and you think, actually that has just drained the life out of me. But then if you're not managing your diary accordingly, or you might have clients that make you feel a certain way, because we all do, or you might have just things you do in your business. So maybe you really hate admin, but you've got to, I don't know, do your tax return or your accounts or whatever it might be. I think it becomes about, like say, managing your diary so you're not burnt out all of the time, because there's so many different tasks that we need to do. So when it comes to the work that you do you do that kind of thing? Do you help clients with with that kind of balancing kind of thing, as well as all the techie stuff?
Yeah, I definitely can. help with that. Yeah. You know, I've got some of my own experience to draw on with sort of how I've learned how to balance my life as well.
Yeah.
Make it actually work for me instead of trying to bend myself out of shape to fit in.
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's definitely a common theme, isn't it, with neurodivergent people? So when we were chatting before, when we do our pre-podcast chats, you were telling me about how you are also training to be a canine massage therapist. And that's quite a kind of a big shift from what you're doing at the minute, kind of stay in the same, you know, the same dog area. But can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to go down that route?
Yeah, well, essentially it was kind of a gut feeling. But there were a few things that kind of feed into that. I actually went on a beginner's canine massage course, just one day, learn how to massage your own dog.
Yeah.
My first dog, Della, because I just thought it'd be a nice thing to do with her, and I was just completely hooked
Yeah.
on what is underneath the dog's skin and what's going on with their muscles and their bones and their bodies.
Yeah.
I kind of always been a little bit interested in anatomy and physiology anyway. And I have joint hypermobility syndrome and chronic pain. So I've had to sort of learn quite a bit about my own body and how to look after it, how to keep muscles and bones functioning and my joints functioning properly. So that kind of, you know, merged together. And then also as a result of a couple of dogs I've had that have really struggled with sensitivity and reactivity to various things, I became quite interested in the link between pain and behaviour.
Yeah.
And you know, clinical canine massage therapy is a way to directly address some forms of soft tissue injury and pain. You know, not just acute pain and acute injury, but chronic pain as well, which is something that a lot of dogs experience, and you know, they're very good at hiding it.
Yeah.
So it felt like a really direct way that I could help dogs that are experiencing pain, and then lead to, you know, a better sort of well-being for them, really, and help a little bit with that behaviour. And rather than becoming a trainer or a behaviourist, I felt like massage therapy, I had slightly more control over the outcome. I think as a trainer and behaviourist, you're teaching the human, really, aren't you? And you're
Yeah.
relying on the human then to be able to put those things into practice. Whereas whilst there's a lot of ways in which a human can influence their dog's muscular health, while they're there in that treatment room with me, I've got more control over the outcome of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That felt like maybe a slightly a way to do that felt like it would work for me, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I just really like being around dogs. I find them really sort of soothing to my nervous system.
Yes. Yeah.
How can I get more dogs in my life?
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It is. And
Yeah.
I think as neurodivergent people, we have like that natural like affinity and empathy when it comes to animals as well. And I think with the canine massage, I think although it's very popular in the agility circles, because obviously
Yeah.
that's, you know, we see that quite a lot with maybe dogs that are just, maybe it's rehab, maybe it's prevention or any of those kind of things. But I think in the pet world as well, I think it's still an area that a lot of pet dog owners don't actually explore, because it's not widely advertised, is it? And I think there's, like you say, there is a strong link to behavior and pain and things. And I think it's just the more people that are creating awareness. And I think it's that kind of shift of, as humans, we know that, you know, massage and all those kind of things benefit us. But when it comes to the pet world and stuff, I think there is kind of that little bit of disconnect, or people don't often realize that these things are available and these things can help. Do you find that with you wanting to go into canine massage, what kind of areas is it that you're wanting to hopefully go into? Are you wanting to go into more pet dog things? Are you wanting to go into sports massage? What kind of areas, or have you not decided yet?
No, I am really interested in the pet dog side of things, and the dogs that are struggling with certain aspects of life where pain might be an underlying problem with that. Because that's, you know, that's what I've experienced with two of my own dogs. And like you said, it's not something that's particularly well known, and I think there's quite a lot we can do to help people understand how to look after their dog's muscular health.
Yeah,
A muscle strain can be really debilitating, take much longer time to heal than you think it does,
yeah,
and turn into chronic pain quite easily.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of dogs out there that could benefit from some pain relief and pain management.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of hard as well, isn't it? Because traditional, like especially from the pet dog kind of area, a lot of people go, "Oh, I'll take my dog to the vet." And I think from what I've definitely seen in an agility sports dog background, the vet doesn't always pick up on everything. And it's sometimes I've known lots of different you know, people that are doing agility basically, and they've taken the dog to the vet and they're like, the vet hasn't picked up on things, or the vet said, oh, it's fine, or they'll just chuck a pain prescription at them or something, but they're not actually dealing with that underlying cause. And I think by going to someone that specializes maybe in massage or physiotherapy, or that, sometimes they find these things that the vets aren't picking up on. But there's a generalized theme, isn't it, from the pet dog industry kind of thing, that pet dog owners, should I say, that there's something wrong with your dog, you take it to the vet and the vet tells you what's wrong with it, and that's the end of that. But sometimes it goes a lot more deeper than that, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And I think, vets often only have 15 minutes and the dog is all tense and uptight. And so the vet's not necessarily got any chance of feeling a muscular injury either.
Yeah.
Because some of them are quite deep, and dog has to be quite relaxed before you can palpate through the layers of tissue and able to feel the area of the injury. And it can take more than one session to be able to do that. Dogs that have got very tight muscles, they're going to need some work on those muscles before they can relax enough
Yeah, and
to
that's interesting.
identify those injuries.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that as well, because I never thought of it that way, in terms of, when from a behavioural point of view. I know for a fact that dogs go to the vets if they feel a certain way, and I very much deal with emotions, that kind of thing. And obviously the fallout of that is going to be stiffer muscles, isn't it, and stiffer how they're standing and things. So that it's really interesting, like you say, that they're going to present to the vet in a very different way that they would probably present to a massage therapist, especially if some, I don't know how you're going to set up your practice when you do it, but some people go around to people's houses, don't they? So for example, you take the two extremes, having a look at a dog that's in a very stressful environment with like a vet's, like with lots of different smells, possibly other dogs, that kind of thing, compared to someone that could see the dog in a more relaxed state, wherever that is, and actually see it over a longer period and a longer time period as well, in terms of number of weeks. You're going to get a very different kind of reading, aren't you, for want of a better word?
You are, for sure, yeah.
Definitely. So you mentioned that you have dogs yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about the dogs that you've got and your journey with them, and many, like, if you've faced any challenges with those, and how you've kind of handled that from a neurodivergent perspective? So for me, one of the things that I noticed very early on, when I first got my Milo back 11 years ago, is that they very quickly pick up on what we're doing, don't they? And I think as a neurodivergent person as well, it can be quite overwhelming when I realized, for me, I was like, well, my dog's got his own issues, so to speak, and those issues can be challenging, but they're also picking up on what I'm doing as well. But when it comes to you and your dogs, can you tell me a little bit more about the dogs that you've got?
Yeah, sure. So I have one dog at the moment. I lost one of my lurchers to cancer very suddenly in January. So at the moment, I've just got Brennan, who's a Saluki Greyhound rescue.
Yeah.
He was previously a coursing dog, and then he was straying until he was picked up by rescue. But he's got quite a lot of things that he finds challenging. Like, particularly to start with, in the very early days, he really struggled to eat. And it's taken me a lot of patience and managing my own expectations and taking a lot of pressure off him, for him to be able to feel safe, I think, to eat. So that was quite an eye-opening journey with him. I mean, he's still not normal when it comes to eating, but I've accepted that, and we do what works for him. And he's healthy, he's happy, he's finally put enough weight on And I've worked with a behaviourist, and we've done some gut work on him to help with that. But there's a variety of things he struggles with. I mean, he's very wary of people he doesn't know. He's very sensitive to movement around him, particularly the movement of people. I think I get the impression he's probably, been hit a bit in the past, because he's quite hand shy as well. It's difficult to do any kind of cooperative care and grooming. He really struggles with lead frustration when he's out and about, particularly towards other dogs. He just wants to go and say hello to every dog he sees, which just isn't possible.
Yeah.
Very quickly gets quite frustrated about that on the end of his lead, which, I mean, that's something I find particularly challenging. I think it's one of those, it's challenging for anybody, but then when you sort of throw RSD into the mix and start worrying about how other people are judging you and your dog, who is almost 5 foot tall when he stands up on his hind legs on the end of the lead, and I just take it so much to heart when he does that. I've been trying to work a little bit more recently on just reminding myself that my dog barked, but everyone's fine, the world didn't end.
Yes. Yeah.
We can get ourselves out of those situations, and we can go away and we can regulate ourselves together. But more recently I have started working with a behaviourist on that, to the bottom of that, because kind of nothing that I was trying to do myself was really working. We weren't getting anywhere.
Yeah, and it's difficult as well, isn't it, when you take on any dog, whether that be particularly a rescue dog, where you don't know the history, and you might have a vague idea of the history, but sometimes people don't know any history at all, do they? And I think we have this, or even a puppy, I think that people can get the same feelings with a puppy, and then you kind of bring them home and you're like completely overwhelmed. You're like, this is not what this is not what I expected. And a lot of the clients that I've had through a dog training background, they have this ideal of, I want my dog to, I want to go to nice walks with him, we want to take him off lead, walk, on the beach or whatever it is. And then the reality is, even whether you get a puppy or a rescue dog, sometimes that doesn't actually work out. And I think it can be quite a lot to take on as well, but especially if you have a rescue that you don't know the history of and things. And I think sometimes we can be a little bit unprepared for that. We know we're taking on, there might be issues and things, but until you actually live in the moment and go, actually, this is quite overwhelming. And being neurodivergent as well, it adds that another layer of, well, am I doing something wrong? Because like you say, that RSD kicks in. And then, for me, I know mainly with Quest, with his anxieties, he'll do something, and I'll be like, oh, especially being a trainer as well, you kind of, expected to have this dog that, is just perfect and what have you. And then you start going out into the world and they're finding the world challenging. And then what happened with me is I was picking up on it, and it was just like this emotional feedback loop of just negativity, because I was, anxious, and then it was making him more anxious. And then, I was worried even more about if other people were judging us and things. So I think it's really difficult, isn't it, when you've got a dog that's got a little bit more behavioral needs, so to speak, and that judgment from people, especially as a neurodivergent, can be 10 times worse than what it can be for neurotypical people. It's like, my husband, for example, he'll take the dog out, and he won't notice if people give him a funny glance, or even he won't care. Do you know what I mean? It'll just be like, goes over his head. But for me, I'm like thinking about it for weeks on end afterwards. Do you know what I mean? So do you find that yourself?
Yeah, I do. And you just sort of, you kind of build up these narratives in your head as to what you think other people are thinking, when in reality, and they're probably not even thinking about you at all.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned having a behaviourist to help you before. So could you explain a little bit about what that involved when you got the behaviourist as help?
Yes. So I think one of the things that was the most challenging for me, but also the most useful, was actually keeping a proper behaviour diary for a while. So not just like what he was doing during the day, but how he was sleeping, where he was sleeping, what kind of sleeping positions he was in, what he was eating, what was coming out the other end of him. Which definitely helped to highlight some things that, with the best will in the world, I'd missed too. particularly around his sleep and his diet.
Yeah.
Which now that we've made some changes, I am seeing those improvements. And it also, I think, gave me, the report that the behaviourist wrote gave me a bit more backup to go to the vet and relook at his pain medication.
Yeah.
Because I'd already done a pain trial with him with the vet, and he was on one medication, but it was really useful to be able to look at that in more detail and go back
Yeah.
and relook at that medication. And we've added a different one into the regime now as well.
Yeah.
We are starting to see some small changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's slow, it's small, but I think, yeah, we're starting to get somewhere.
Yeah.
I managed to go on holiday last week and it went better than I expected. So,
yeah. Oh, good.
yeah.
That's good. So you mentioned that you were asked to curate some behaviour diaries. Could you tell us a little bit, for people who are listening that might not have had to do that before, kind of what that process involved?
Yeah. So, I mean, we did, I think it was like 3 or 4 days to start with, and it was pretty much everything that went on in his day-to-day life. So, as I said, how he behaved when he was out, what he was doing when he was at home, how much he was sleeping, what positions he was sleeping in, night camera to look at his night sleep, wrote down everything that he ate, took pictures of his poop, how he behaved after he'd eaten, all of that kind of thing. I mean, that was really challenging.
Yes. Okay, so writing it down, did you have to write all of these things down, or how did you collate the information?
Yeah. So there was like a series of different sheets that I printed out, and then I could write all the information down into them. I find recording stuff as a habit really tricky. That's just not the way my brain works. And then also, just because I was recording everything, it then felt like I was overthinking everything that I was doing as well.
Yeah.
And then wondering whether the behaviourist was going to judge me on any of those things.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just like particularly the first day I had to do it, by the end of the day, I felt like my brain was going to explode. But it was that kind of, I know this is going to be useful for us in the end, and I've only got to do this for another 3 or 4 days. That just kind of kept me going.
Yeah, and like you say, it's like the actual recording of things, and the collecting of the data can be so, like you say, so overwhelming if you're having to like print sheets out, write things down, make sure you've got the right sheets that you're writing them on, that they're in the right place, that you're not missing anything. And also, like, I think as well, like you say, that element of it where you are writing things down, and as a neurodivergent person, like kind of second guessing everything. So you're being honest on the forms, but then you're like, actually, am I going to get judged for this? Am I doing it right? Am I doing something wrong? Is it me? And I think as neurodivergent people, we overthink everything, don't we? And we're like, oh gosh. And it kind of, I can imagine, not for you, but I can imagine some people, if they have to fill behaviour diaries, then it's kind of, I don't know if I dare put that on, or what are they going to think of me if that's, and from a behavior point of view, it might be the thing that we are, that's what we need to know, but the neurodivergent person may not feel comfortable sharing because they're going to have this perceived judgment or this perceived criticism, because, as neurodivergent people, we've grown up, haven't we, in a world where we get so much more criticism or perceived criticism, and it might not be anything to do with the dog or the behaviorist or that moment in time. It just might be from us as neurodivergents kind of protecting ourselves, because that's what our brain has made us do, isn't it? And so it was interesting that you picked up on that point, because I always say with everything that I do, there's so much more going on than the actual thing. And I think as behaviourists and trainers, it's some things we need to, like this is why I enjoy doing the podcast and speaking to people, getting the awareness out that it might not be anything going on with the dog. It might be that the person that is, especially if they're neurodivergent, or even if they're not, maybe they're not putting something down because they feel they're going to be judged, or that they're going to have been doing it wrong, and they're going to get that blame and stuff. So I think by having the conversations and opening it out there, that when we are doing the behavior work that we do, always look at everything else. Like when I'm doing agility behavior work, I always say to people, it's not just what happens in that agility ring, it's the days leading up, it's the, you know, the learned habits, it's how the handler feels, it's how the dog feels at that moment in time. There's so much more, and it's so easy just to focus on, we want this outcome, but that outcome can be changed by something that can seem unrelated. So yeah, definitely interesting that you picked up on that point there. So one of the things I've been speaking to different people about when it comes to behaviour diaries, other behaviourists and trainers, and also other people that have had to fill the diaries in, and one of the things that comes up all the time is the fact that they collate their information by, you know, they say printing the sheets out, writing stuff down, and like you mentioned, that can be quite overwhelming, especially if you've got multiple sheets of paper in multiple different places in the house and making sure they're in order and things. And one of the things that I often say to people is, what would you know, making my practices more neurodivergent friendly, what would be the easiest way for you to give me that information? Because, you know, we still need that information, but would it be easier if you dropped me a voice note, or would it be easier if you recorded something for me? Or, you know, because we've usually always all got our phones in our hands, haven't we, and something, it's going to be a lot easier just to pop a voice note, even if it's not, you know, if you've got somewhere like WhatsApp for Business or something where you can put those little things in and have those separate folders. So I think in a way that's how your VA work and stuff can tie in with helping different behaviours and trainers, can't it? Because you're like, actually, have you thought about this from a neurodivergent perspective? And we've got this kind of technology thing that you can put in place. But as a dog owner that was going through that process, would you have found that, you know, recording the data a different way would have helped you feel less overwhelmed?
Possibly. I mean, I always find I have to try something before I can be sure whether it's going to work. But yeah, I mean, like maybe info dumping into a WhatsApp group or something. Then I'm also really conscious of then that's just like a whole block of information that the behaviourist has then got to try and sort out at their end, and maybe their brain isn't going to work that way either. So I think there's a lot to be said for having a sort of a two-way conversation about that and kind of working out both of you what's going to work. But I think there's definitely a gap in the market for an app that will do that. If there isn't already one, I don't know of one that will do quite that, but basically you want something with a bit of AI in the background that will pull all of that information out and put it in and present it in a way that works behaviourist.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important you said that about a two-way conversation. And I think as well as, especially doing behaviour work and things, it's, like you say, there's always, we tend to focus so much on the dog, and the dog training industry is like, let's get as much information we can about the dog and what they're doing and things like that. But sometimes we need it to be as much about the human, and how, you know, how can we make this process easier for you? How can we, you know, how would it be less overwhelming for you? How would we, in a way, get the best information out of you that we need to help move the dog forward? But we need to take in all of the elements. We need to take in the human element, and we need to make it as easy as possible. And, you know, so there's less barriers, so there's less frustration, so there's less overwhelm. But in turn of doing that, we also need to, you know, get the information and everything we need for the dog. So I definitely, having that two-way conversation is super important. But I think as trainers and behaviourists, the tendency tends to be to focus a lot on what the dog needs and not so much on, you know, the owner's kind of history. And I think as well, by changing what we do as behaviourists and trainers, slowly, if we all start to make slight changes and make it more neurodivergent friendly, or make it more, even in a neurotypical world, really make it more about the human, then we're going to get a better solution, and possibly a solution quicker. Because I think sometimes when you're dealing with behavior, we're very, like I say, very much focused on the dog, and these little things that kind of maybe don't make sense, or that are being missed or whatever, and the missing piece is something to do with the human. But we haven't yet got it to a stage where we're at the, you know, stage of, you know, I'll quiz you about your dog, but, you know, this is how we're gonna, you know, in a non-invasive way, trying to get the information out of the human so they feel supported, they feel seen and understood. But it's like a whole picture then, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. And I think you know, with neurodivergent people as well, sometimes they're not so good at kind of reading those cues and making those assumptions about how the trainers and behaviorists are going to work with them. So being really explicit as well about how you're going to support them, and you know, it's and like being really clear that it's okay to do this differently, or it's okay to take a break, or you know, okay to sit out for a bit. I think that can help too, because you know, we might just assume that it's not because you haven't said so.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? Like making
Yeah.
allowances for how the human feels and things, and like you say, it's about that energy battery, isn't it? And I think when you're already dealing with something that's quite can be quite draining and quite upsetting and quite frustrating, like a behavioral challenge with the dog, that can sometimes just take so much out of us as neurodivergent people that, you know, we don't often, if people aren't familiar with how that makes the human feel, we can be, you know, it almost can get overlooked. And then like a lot of the work that I do is the fact that, you know, the dog will pick up on the human signals and things, and actually if we're not looking after the human element, it might actually make the behavior worse because the dog's picking up on that. And, you know, so there's a lot to it, isn't it, when it comes to behavioral things and in general, but also this level of adding neurodiversity to it. It can be really, really challenging if you've got like a neurodiverse person with a behavioral challenging dog. It can just feel like too much, can't it, sometimes?
Yeah, and I think you know, like if as neurodivergent dog owners we're already quite overwhelmed with how our dog's behaving, we may not even have the capacity to advocate for ourselves on what we need.
Yeah.
Um, and just, you know, having someone that, I mean, we can't expect trainers and behaviorists to know how we're feeling,
No.
but or how each of us is experiencing that. But I think just having someone that can like maybe see a subtle sign and think, okay, they need just let's give them a break for a minute or something like that, and just being
Yeah.
aware of that sort of that challenge, that added layer of challenge, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You know, that's what I mean. Just that level of awareness of, have we got something else that, you know, could I be doing a bit more to help this partnership, this human and dog partnership? Yes, you know, the dog's got these needs, but can I be doing more from a human element? You know, what you're being more aware, especially if the trainer is neurotypical and isn't aware of neurodiversity, just being more aware of things that their client may be experiencing and the challenges that they may face. Because ultimately, if they make themselves more aware, and I think as dog trainers, behaviorists, we're always looking at, you know, the next course to learn about dog behavior, the next course to learn about, you know, this latest thing that's happening. But I think if we start to take on the human element a little bit more and learn about the humans just as much as we do the dogs, then they're going to find that the whole success rate goes up, because we are dealing with people, aren't we, at the end of the day?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So when it comes to how you managed the, you know, the behavior with you and like your dog, and how you find it quite overwhelming and stuff, did you find any like clever ways or hacks that you could do to make things less overwhelming for yourself? So maybe if any neurodivergent people are listening that are going through a similar thing. So one of the things I did when training all of my dogs, really, so I make sure I'm doing the correct things but not finding it overwhelming, is every time, for example, I make a cup of tea or something, I'll go and just put a few treats on the side, or I have a little pot of treats near the kettle, and I'll make sure I'm do, you know, 3 minutes training with a dog, because I feel like it's not overwhelming, it's dead easy, I'm there anyway. So when it comes to how you manage the needs of your dog, or, you know, keep the diaries or whatever it might be, did you come up with any clever little hacks or tricks that you can pass on?
Yeah, well, thinking about the diaries, after that kind of initial intense diary keeping, we went back and did one that was more focused on just on what he was eating and what was coming out the other end of him and what effect it was having on his gut, whilst we changed up a few things with his diet. So with that, I actually got, you know, that kind of sticky whiteboard stuff you get that you can stick on the wall.
Oh yeah.
On the wall.
Yeah.
And then I would just write right next to where he ate. So it was right there and I could fill it in as he was eating.
Yeah.
And that made it a lot easier to keep a record of what he was eating and when.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of, and then yeah, I took poo pictures, and you can look at the date and the time on the photograph when you take it. So every few days then I'd sit down and kind of compile the two together.
Yeah.
And that helped. And it also helped that I was able to, I talked to the behaviourist and I said, look, I find diary keeping really difficult. Let's try and make this a bit easier. Let's restructure the spreadsheet that we use. And sometimes she was asking me to like put a score on things. I can't score. I'm like, no, it depends. It might have been a 5 at this moment, but then it was a 7 then. Now it's a 4. So we went to a colour code in varying grades of green, red and orange, and that also seemed to help a bit as well. So again, it was that kind of that conversation, that how can we make this work for both of us. Medication, I was quite worried when he first started taking medication that I would actually remember to give it to him, because I've struggled with that with my own medication in the past, remembering to take my things. But a therapist that I work with, who is also neurodivergent herself, she taught me about habit stacking, and about how you can attach little habits together into a block. So his medication was twice a day, 12 hours apart. So I attached his nighttime medication to bedtime, which was about 9 p.m. for me. And that helped to kind of anchor 9 and 9 in my brain. So I mean, I'm doing pretty well actually at remembering to give him his medication on. And then he has a couple of supplements that he takes during the day, and I've just got a reminder on my phone for those, because the exact timing of those isn't quite so important anyway. As long as them during the day, away from his main medication, then that's okay. I find it really difficult to put stuff away. For some reason, that simple step of opening and closing a cupboard door just is the final straw for my brain when it comes to functioning. So now I don't have doors on the cupboard. And it's all just like all of the little bits and pieces that he needs every day that's just there on the shelf. And actually, I also find if I've got a really nice piece of furniture, it prompts me to keep it much tidier than if it's some scrappy old thing. So I've got a really large dresser that I keep all of his things on.
It's
it just makes things a bit easier in my brain somehow.
And I think it's giving ourselves our acceptance and that awareness of what we need as neurodivergent people to move forward, and kind of like getting rid of the narratives that it has to be a certain way, like you said there about packing things away and just opening and closing the doors, which I completely get. So for me, it's like if there's too many steps involved in a process, my brain goes no. So just getting rid of those steps, like you say, by just not having cupboard doors on, and that's fine, that's acceptable, that works for me, that's fine, and that enables you to do what then you need to do, or by setting reminders on your phone or habit stacking. And I think it's having that awareness and that acceptance that this is okay and this works for me. And we live in such a world where we've created this, the world has created this, what's normal and what's not normal, but actually it's just about what works for us, isn't it? And just being happy with that. And I think that's really important that you've said that. So when it comes to we've touched on it quite a lot already, but when it comes to you and how you and your dog respond together, so one of the things that I've found with all of my dogs really is they massively pick up on emotions, and anything I'm feeling they tend to mirror that as well. So is that something that you found with your dog? Does he pick up on the emotions and what you're feeling at the time, and how do you react when that happens? Do you notice it happening, and do you react differently if it does happen?
It can happen for sure. He's not quite as sensitive to my emotions as one of my previous dogs was. I mean, she was very sensitive to my emotions, and like during COVID, when we all started working at home, I was employed at the time, and I was because I was working for a medical association, it was all quite stressful because obviously we had a lot of vulnerable patients, vulnerable kidney patients, and there was a whole load of like extra clinical practice guidelines that had to be put out in very short time frames, and we had to take all of our education online, and I was just kind of sat there in the back bedroom trying to navigate all of that. And like Sandy just wouldn't, she really struggled to settle, and after a bit I thought, okay, I'm really stressed, that's why she's settling. And so once I was able to regulate some of that stress, then she could settle.
Yeah.
And, you know, up until I lost her recently, she was always a really good mirror of how I was feeling internally, because, you know, also with autism, sometimes it's actually really difficult to identify your own emotions.
Yeah.
So she was a really good mirror for that. But with Brennan at the moment, quite a bit of that is physical, actually, because he's so movement sensitive.
Yeah.
If you're stressed, it's difficult to slow down. And so I notice straight away if I'm stressed and I start moving faster or more erratically, or just not thinking about what I'm doing with my body. That instantly changes how his comfort levels around me and how he reacts to how I move. So it's a really good reminder then to, you know, slow myself down.
Yeah.
You know, we're working on introducing into a handling mat where he comes onto a mat for specific grooming tasks. And like if I've been rushing around before and I'm still, you know, stressed about other things during the day or thinking ahead to whatever, he's much less likely to come and settle down on his handling mat until I've regulated myself and taken some deep breaths and just kind of engaged my parasympathetic nervous system, really. But that's something we're taught to do as massage therapists, as part of our training, because if I can't regulate my own nervous system, how can I possibly expect the dog I'm treating to relax into the treatment and have an effective if I can't do that for myself?
Yeah, and that's interesting.
It's a really good skill to learn.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of links as well with the neurodiversity thing as well, doesn't it? Like, you know, even people that don't necessarily think they have, although that massage has a place in every dog's life, doesn't it? But I think if they don't think, actually, my dog's fine, but just from what you've said there and just learning to, you know, like regulate themselves and then, you know, or using the massage to kind of, you know, regulate themselves and their dog, really, I think it can have a place in every type of dog ownership, can't it? Yeah, super interesting that there, what you've just said. So to finish off with, I'm just going to ask you 5 quick fire questions so we can get to know you a little bit better as a person. So are you ready? The dead hard questions these are, you know. So the first one, tea or coffee?
Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
Interesting. You see, we've never had somebody that splits the answer. So normally it's either a split tea or coffee, but that's interesting. Makes sense, that does. So if you had to pick one, what's your favorite dog breed?
Oh, any kind of sight hound, hands down.
Amazing. So what's your go-to dog product that you use or recommend all the time?
Well, it's kind of not really a product, but ACE free work, animal-centered education.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I get that.
If anybody who doesn't know what it is, pop over to the Tilly Farm website, and that will give you some information. But I really like it just as a simple enrichment activity, but also as a way to connect with your dog and teach them new things as well.
Yeah, and you can also use it as kind of a way to look at movement as well, can't you? So there's lots of
absolutely. So I'm actually I'm also working on getting my ACE practitioner badge, because I think it's something that goes really nicely with massage as a way of assessing the dog and as a way of supporting their movement in between treatment sessions.
Definitely. So if you had to choose lead walk or off lead adventure?
A long line adventure.
Yeah.
I cannot let Brennan off the lead. He's a flight risk and he has high prey drive. So a long line is my absolute favorite thing with him, because it gives him that bit extra freedom than being on a short lead, and it gives me peace of mind. Yeah,
definitely. So that could kind of work as well with your go-to dog product as well, can't it? So kind of one there.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then the last one, what is your favorite way to recharge after a busy day?
A nice, quiet, peaceful time alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alone time is just, that is my go-to for recharging.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely found at the moment is that one I didn't realize is because with having a neurodivergent brain, you think you're like, for me, like I always have to be busy. So I always have to do some kind of active rest. But with it being nicer, nicer weather in the UK at the moment, I've just taken to just sitting on my garden chair outside and just literally staring at the different plants in the garden. And I didn't actually realize until I was like, actually, this is really kind of like relaxing and it's just what my body needs. But if I did, it has to be when my brain is in a mindset to just do it, because sometimes I'll sit there and I'm like, no, I'm too busy, I'll go on my phone or find something to do. But yeah, just seeing, I definitely resonate with that one, just that sitting alone time and just kind of emptying your mind, which isn't always easy to do sometimes, is it?
No, it's not.
Oh,
Particularly when you're sort of neurodivergent, and I think you sometimes have a tendency to always be chasing that dopamine high as well.
yeah,
Sort of be constantly wanting the dopamine hits. Sometimes
yeah,
it can be difficult to just kind of sit back.
yeah.
But yeah, I did a meditation course last year, which was really good as well. Um, so yeah, I do try and meditate every day if I can as well, just for 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does make a difference.
Amazing. So lastly, if anybody's listening and they're interested in the work that you do, where can they find more information from you? Where can they find the, work that you do? Where can they get in touch?
Yeah, so you can find me mainly on my website, which is virtualadminhound.co.uk, all one word. Yeah, I've got a blog on there. And yeah, that's where you can find me mainly.
Amazing. And what we'll do is we'll pop the link below the podcast so anybody that is interested just can click on, and it's just a dead easy way to get in touch. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been a fantastic chat. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. And we spoke about a really wide range of different topics, haven't we? So I'm sure the listeners will get a lot from listening to this podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. If you are new to the podcast, please make sure that you've hit follow or subscribe, depending on where you're listening, to make sure that you never miss a future episode. So it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Sarah. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.